This morning, there's this headline. Videos, detainees, and eyewitnesses confirm Hamas's October 7 brutality. The stage is set for criminal trials. So the question, who are the Israelis and, in essence, the United States negotiating with? Well, joining us now with insight is Adam Scott Bellos. He's the founder and CEO of the Israel Innovation Fund, a nonprofit that connects people around the world to Israel through contemporary Israeli culture. Welcome to the show.
Good morning.
Thank you for having me, Gina.
Absolutely. You know, if this is a case, in a lot of these cases, we have a clear enemy that is identified. In this case, it is sometimes hard to really, we know Hamas is the enemy, but really, who is Hamas? How many regular Palestinians, right, are actually Hamas, right, and actually identify with them? Can you help clarify some of this for our audience?
Wow, Gina, that is such a good question. Let me just say thank you again for having me. But again, excellent question. It really comes down to I'm going to get very academic on you. It comes down to the formation of the Palestinian national identity and the national resistance movement of the Palestinian people. And this is very important to understand how intertwined the two have been since the formation of the Palestinian national movement. You very rarely are able to separate national resistance from national identity. Both many anti-Zionist, pro-Palestinian scholars have written about this in great detail, even from their anti-Zionist perspective, that it is very hard to untwine or untangle resistance and national identity when it comes to the Palestinians specifically. This is a very unique thing when it comes to their national identity. Both Baruch and Kimmerling in their book, The Palestinian People, wrote about this. So is I'm forgetting the author's name. I don't even know why I'm forgetting it right now, but The Palestinian Identity, The Making of a Modern Consciousness by Rashid Khalidi, who is considered to be, the Palestinian academic of academics, also discusses the importance of the martyr, the fidei, the need for the martyr's imagery to be that of the greatest reflection of Palestinian national patriotism, so to speak. So we are looking at a very unique case. And on top of that, the United States has done an excellent job propping up, one side that they think is less radical than the other. Okay, key thing here is less radical than the other.
Yeah.
In the 80s, the first Intifada happened in 1987, and Hamas was really the driving force behind it because that was the time it was founded, and Yasser Arafat was in exile. And after the destruction of the first Intifada, Israel started to understand that they might need to negotiate with the Palestinians. So instead of propping up Hamas, who was actually really becoming the spokespeople for the Palestinian people, who really represented their national aspirations and their drive to resist what they referred to as the Zionist entity or the colonial occupiers, they gave the spotlight to Yasser Arafat, and he was brought back in out of exile, and thus we have the Oslo Accords, which never should have been signed given the conditions that they were signed under.
So there's a lot, this is David Brody here in D.C., there's a lot to sift through with the Palestinians. We keep calling them the Palestinians. Can we just be honest here for a second? They come from Jordan. They come from Syria. They're not Palestinians. They're Jordanians and Syrians and other countries. But the point is that Palestine was a term that was given by the Roman Empire to that land, to the area, because they were trying to the Romans were trying to stick it to the Jews at the time. So people need to understand their history here.
I don't disagree with you on certain aspects of who the Palestinians are. Remember, I just thought it was funny that I couldn't remember the author's name for a second, but Rashid Khalidi's book is called The Making of a Modern Consciousness, the Palestinian Identity. Key word there is making of modern consciousness. So, many people argue that Palestinian identity either started in the last 10 years of the 19th century, during the 1920s and the 20th century, or after 1967. There is no agreement whatsoever across the board on the anti-Zionist academic side. So there is a lot of water to what you held to what you are saying. But we do have to remember, at minimum, since 1948, 1967, this group of people that refers to themselves as Palestinians do have a unique story and narrative that does somewhat constitute being recognized as a people. I don't disagree with you about the fact that there was massive migration to the mandate of Palestine because of what the early Zionist movement was able to do in terms of taking this colonial backwater and turning it into, the beautiful country that I see, in my rear view behind me. And it's very important. There are certain nuances that we can't ignore. I feel like disregarding their identity is kind of a negative because it makes our side sound a little bit more extreme and unaccepting, given the fact that we have worked since 1994 to give them their state, to give them their economic independence, and to hopefully rely on the fact that their leaders could possibly be honest and not steal the $6 billion that they have gotten since 1994. Remember, up until the Trump administration, the U.S. had given a total between 1994 and 2020 almost $5.4 billion. Then the Biden administration a couple of years ago reinstituted their aid, and it's now almost up to $6 billion. That's $6 billion for sanitation, transportation, education, and any other civil service that you could ever imagine. But unfortunately, you walk into the Palestinian Authority and it's trashed and it smells. And the fact is
Adam, I'm sorry, go ahead. Finish your thought.
No. Please, I'm on your show.
No, so you mentioned nuances that can't be ignored, and it seems to me that two key nuances, and you've kind of raised them already, are first and foremost that this is an ideological war, but second of all, that this is kind of a national war. It's a nationalistic war. So what can the only outcome be? It seems to me the only outcome that would save Israel or would uphold Israel's security is that all of the people who call themselves Palestinian, no matter where they come from, have got to leave Gaza.
Terrence, absolutely excellent point that you just brought up. And I have to say, the reason why we're in this situation is because when we signed the Oslo Accords, we did not make a caveat to be the changing of their textbooks. Because if that was the case, we would have almost 25 years, 30 years of a generation re-educated to not hate Jews. And unfortunately, you're right. We have a problem where multiple generations have been taught to hate Jews. If you remember the documents that were found on the terrorists of October the 7th, they were calling us vermin and a disease and to decapitate us. There were instructions to rape women, decapitate people, burn bodies, because the world had to be purged of the Jewish Israeli disease. So there are a lot of questions that are going to need to be answered after this war is over. And especially, we still can't really conject because we have no idea if things are going to spill into the West Bank. And if we look at what happened a couple days ago, the second person in 20 years was just hung for allegedly collaborating with Israel. And if that's the case, we're also hearing that in Nablus, once again, Hamas is taking the front reins of popularity. So I don't like to conject. I don't want to say, hey, we're going to have to move all these people out of here, or, the traditional peacemaking initiatives might be thrown out. But I can tell you right now, President Trump absolutely knew how to deal with the Middle East by defunding the educational institutions that were radicalizing young Palestinians. Yep. And that is the reason why we are in this mess today. It is what is giving Russia the ability to say failed U.S. diplomatic solutions because of this small piece of education.
Adam Scott Bellos, thank you for being with us. We appreciate it.